We did it. Hello, Miss Alba.
Hello, Mr. Brandon.
Hello, darling. So, for all of you watching, I started doing these weekly lives and getting different access consciousness facilitators on here to talk about different topics because we're awesome and we have lots to talk about, and lots of different things, and we're all unique creatures. So I'm kind of excited to see where these different things go. And with Alba and I were having a chat about doing this live, and I was like, what do you want to do it on? And she was like, well, we could do it on something about relationships. So we came up with I came up with this topic, the conquest of relationship.
It's just cracking me up. The conquest of relationships. And it's so Latino. It's so
it is.
Latino. Let's go.
But I don't even think it's just Latino. I think it's what a lot of us do. But I want to read you something, because after I titled that live, I Googled that shit. I was like, I'm going to Google the conquest of relationship. And here's what Google says. Okay. The phrase, the conquest of relationship, often refers to a mentality where one person views a romantic or sexual relationship as a goal to be achieved rather than a partnership built on mutual connection and respect.
That makes me cringe immediately.
Yeah, but it's a little too close to home for all of us. How many of us have had relationship be this goal, this thing that we need to acquire?
Yeah. And this pursuit, as if when you get it, like you get a star on your forehead, or you get you can check that line and stuff, and you stop being in question because you're already there. You already got it. You hit a home run, so to speak, but not really. Yeah.
Well, and there's so many things like that. Like, I noticed for myself, like this is a big topic for me too. I had a conversation with Gary Douglas a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, it's just this thing keeps coming up about, I should be in a relationship. Why do I have a relationship? I need a relationship. All of those different, the shit that rolls around in your head.
Yeah.
And first question he always asks me also is that yours? And I'm always like, no, but it's still there. And for me, it was something that I so grew up ingrained with, was this idea that you need somebody else to be there to create your life for you. And so I'm grateful you're on here with me with this topic, because I've watched you also over the years be poked continuously about it. One of the things that Gary he said to me over the years is, he's like, you just want to be a kept man, and be like, but it was true, and I know that about myself now, of anywhere that I have that energy of, like, just wanting to resist it or triggered by it, there's some point of view I have creating it. And yeah.
Well, I just want to go a bit to the last thing that you were saying when you were asked if it was yours or not. I remember that one of the first things that I resisted about access was when I first heard the phrase 99% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are not yours. I were like,
really?
Yeah, totally. That was the first thing that I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, no. Like, I was so like, we have neurons, we create synapses, there's neurons that do all that jazz. Like, of course, my thoughts are mine. And then fast forward, I was living with the first man that I ever lived, like my first partner. And I remember we were together maybe like for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I was having a shower and I was like, actually, the last names that we both have would be very cute for our children. And that was like, whoa. I never wanted to have children. And it's not that I resist the idea, but I was like very clear, like, hey, that doesn't really work for me. I'm all good being single for forever. So when I thought about that, and then, you know, I connected the dots with the who does it belong to, like in retrospective, I was like, oh my God, that was not even mine. That was not really my thought. It was actually his. And actually, after we broke up, I think within a year he had, you know, he had his first kid, and in 2 years he had one more. So he clearly wanted children, you know? So it's like first really acknowledging, I mean, in relationships, you had to be clear on what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that's a continuous exploration with so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True story. And, you know, but for a lot of us, we get into a relationship with this idea that to become one, you know, now that we're in it, we're doing it together. We have to be the same. We have the same points of view. We desire to create the same thing. And the thing that one of the things that I kind of struggled with over the years was that I didn't have clarity on who I am. You know, I didn't have that relationship with myself. So I was always looking for relationship to be some validation of who somebody else saw me as.
Wow. And for me, it's interesting because the point of view that I had is okay, so if I find someone that can compliment me on the faults that I have, like if I don't feel super strong, I don't know, creating money, which is something that I've been poked recently about a lot. If I am with a man that actually can create that, then I can just cruise, you know, like I don't need to do and create anything else because he's the one that actually is delivering. And I need to be very clear on what am I bringing to the table for that relationship to also work for both him and me in this situation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's also crazy because we're still individuals, even though we're in a relationship.
Well, and it's interesting because it's all our points of view also. Like if you look at, you know, it would be easy to go to, oh, well, I should be able to create everything on my own so I don't need anybody else. Or to look at, okay, where does this person contribute energy? And see, because it can work, it can work so many different ways based on being the space from which you choose something. So let's like say you're in a relationship and the other person's better at making money, but you have the point of view that I, you know, like myself, for example, over the years of I need to be a kept man. Then all I could do was rely on that person to be the source for that thing. That's the only place I could receive it from. But if I was in question with it and went, okay, so what can I actually receive with this? Like, what am I great at? Yeah. It was a completely different. I tell you one thing. I sent this out the other day. I shared it with a bunch of people. I was in I was in the auditions of MasterChef Australia many years ago, 12 years ago, and I did this video audition. But
of course, keep going.
Is that your relationship calling you?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I did this video audition for MasterChef Australia, right? Which I went into and got into the top 100. And I'll find a way to share it with anyone who's interested in seeing this thing, because I watched it the other day and I was, holy shit, has things changed since then? But here's how it came about, right? I was in a relationship with Simone Milasas at the time. We were having a conversation and she was like, well, you know, you contribute so much energy. You're such a contribution, but you're not really creative. And I was like, so, you know, and so I literally that day filled this application, did this video audition and got into the auditions for MasterChef Australia based on that. But it's like, but it the reason I bring that up is because it showed to me it was my point of view creating where it wasn't creative. As soon as I
Yeah.
changed that, I can do that.
Yeah, totally. And what a great avenue, like in the, in the kitchen, you actually have to outcreate yourself being creative to be a different, create a different flavor, a different dish and whatnot. Um, I think we are very funny because we know that we're different. We know that we um, might create something different, but it really requires us to be totally present and honest with what do we want to create. And I mean, I
Yeah.
remember many years ago having a conversation with you with the current relationship that I am in, that I was like, dude, either we find a way or this is going to go to hell in a handbasket in 1 month, if not a week. Like, we need to do something different. And I know that without the tools, we wouldn't be together anymore, like, for sure. Because we were in such different spaces and we had created relationships from so many different points of view that it wasn't until we actually figured it out and were able to change and ask the questions that would give us the clarity that it actually started to be a real contribution instead of a source of, oh, let me do the check mark, we're so attractive towards each other that of course it must work. And I wonder for how many of us we have like this like this set point of view, like, oh, if he has this, then it must work, instead of, I wonder if it even will. If even though it's like your highest expectation or it's your highest priority, if you're not in question to see if the person that you are looking at in creating a relationship, would it work or wouldn't. Yeah, it's so easy to go into the conclusions and to the reference points of how family does it. I come from a family where my mom had 6 sisters, and all of them by the age of 45 were single with kids, and they were on their own, and the relationships that they have and create now are with each other. Like, that was actually the most dominant energy, like women for the women, sort of. And I was looking at that a while ago, and I was like, that is so interesting. Like, of course, it's just a choice. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just interesting that they all like fell into the same pattern of like, oh, she chose that. Maybe I can also choose that. And maybe they're happier than they were in when they were married, which is all good. But I wonder how many of us just we start replicating whatever is around us instead of actually asking, like, will this work? If I choose this, will it actually work? Would it actually make me happier? Or would it just, drag me down into the same pattern or the same kind of relationship or the same dynamics that I had when I was growing up? And I think that's a very cool question to be asking every time.
Yeah, totally. And that idea also, okay, this doesn't work, but I'm going to make it work based on what I've decided will work. I seen that in myself so much over the years, where it was this idea of, well, I can make it work. It doesn't work, but I can make it work, rather than looking at what is. And that, like, I love the tools we have on, well, the tools of access, but one being balance. If you're getting into a relationship with somebody, allowing them to be who they are, not, well, I see who you are, but you can be this too. The conquest. I am going to conquest person. They will become what I've decided they should be for me.
They're amazing, but if they can just add this to their repertoire, then everything would be amazing. Yep, I heard that one before.
Totally.
And you know what's funny? It's that thing that Gary and Dane have been poking me about, being controlling. It's so funny that in my world, it was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm so laid back. I'm so chill. I have no point of view about him hanging out with only women, because in Access, 90% of the classes, it's women only. And the classes that he has, they're 3-day body classes and all that jazz. And I'm like, that's fine with me. But it wouldn't match my definitions about the kind of person I am, that I didn't see it. So sometimes you need to like really like just take one step backwards and ask yourself, like, what am I not actually willing to see about myself? What is it that I've decided that I am, that I firmly will not see about myself, that is actually fucking up your life? Because in my case it was, but until I was able to actually ask the question and be aware of the spaces that I was being controlling, that I would never be able to change it.
Well, I salute you on that, because I've watched you over the years, and it's one of the hardest things. Well, I know for myself, in self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like, you hear there's so many things where you just like you don't want to see certain things about yourself, and then when you actually are willing to have the vulnerability and go, okay, so what is this that I'm not willing to see? And that can be really fucking uncomfortable, but also the willingness to see the things, or have an awareness of the things that you're choosing. It's such a I see it. I see vulnerability as such a rare gift in the world.
Yeah, it totally is. It is. And I think the first step is actually really allow yourself to see it. Like really step into like being curious about it, instead of, putting your gloves and boxing it out, or let me show you how I am not that, and let me prove to you that I can be something different. Of course, I mean, we're very diverse in the way that we are, but we don't really realize when we go into the defaults that we were not even aware that we're a default. And that's the thing that you have to be the most present with, or that I had to start like really questioning, like, wait, I know that they are, Gary and Dane were facilitating me into something that I was not really aware, like, at all. So I was like, bit by bit, I was like, okay, if I didn't have to defend that I'm not, then when am I doing that? Like, what is it triggering? And usually there would be a trigger that I wouldn't really realize, but it was there. And that trigger, it would always make me go back into that automatic pilot instead of the question. So that's a cue for everyone that is watching. Like, if you have a blind spot right now, just see what are the cues, see what are the things that actually trigger you and that you go out of question in a nanosecond. We all have them.
I love that though. The trigger would put you into autopilot, because it totally does, that autopilot state of fight for or against. And the thing I'm grateful for is because man, the last few years has been a different journey for me personally, but recognizing that those triggers have been such a huge gift, having that as an awareness in relationship. If you're in relationship and you're getting triggered, where am I this also? Where do I have this going on for me that I'm judging or separating from with this person? And that's been such a huge source for freedom. With, if you've got judgment of anything or anyone, if you're triggered by anything or anyone, if you want to separate from or fight against anyone or anything, where have I been there and done this? Or where am I currently being and doing it with myself that I'm not acknowledging?
I love that. I love that. That is actually such a gift to step into. And let me give you like a very weird example. This morning I was up super early. It was like 4:30 a.m.
What?
And
How early? It's super early.
4:30 a.m.
That you beat me. I'm in Australia. I got up at 5. So there you go. You beat me.
Yeah, exactly. We
All
don't
right.
have those birds that actually gently wake you up. I have my dogs that wake me up like that. But then, I fell back at, I think like at 6, I had like a small nap, and then I, went about my day or whatever. And then I was tired. And then I was like, maybe I should take a nap, but maybe I shouldn't take a nap, because if I do take a nap, then it's gonna be late, and I'm gonna be up again, and I'm not gonna be able to sleep. So I was in that fight and resistance, and I wasn't allowing anything to change. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give myself 5 minutes or 5 seconds to try and sleep. If I actually do fall asleep, amazing. And then I did it. I just closed my eyes. I was like, okay, if I fall asleep, all good. And then as soon as I relaxed into that choice of not fighting to not fall asleep, everything changed, and I didn't have any more sleep in me. I was wide awake. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go and, face whatever I need to face, conquest whatever I need to conquer today. But it was that moment of, oh, if I just don't fight it, and if I just allow this to happen, that's the thing that allowed it to change. So usually when you are, when you have all this Latin or whatever energy that you just want to fight, just relax into it. And it's going to create something different. It's going to spark a different awareness that you never had, because you were, with this resistance, you were not really willing to look at it at all. So it wouldn't change. Yeah.
Love that. That's awesome. So, we want to give some people some tools for working with, creating a relationship. So I'll start. Okay. Because I've been listening to I'm on Access Me app, just geek out on that thing. Every day is a different topic. I'm just listening to a bunch of different things. But one of the things, I listened to this old recording of Gary channeling Raz, many, many, many years ago, and he was talking to somebody about relationship. And he said, what you want to do if you're creating a relationship is you want to write down everything that you want that person to have. And you want to write down everything that you don't want that person to have in asking for the relationship. And because a lot of people go through, I want a relationship. I have no idea what I want it to be like, but I kind of do, because I have this fantasy idea of what it should be like, and then I'm going to create it and expect it to be that way, rather than getting really clear on what it is you desire to create as a relationship. The same thing. I've seen this in myself, where it will be like, total fantasy reality, rather than look at it. The last few days, actually, I have been getting really present with what I desire as my future. And one of the ways that you can do that is split it into some different categories: relationship, sex, business, money, where you would be living, traveling, etc., things like that. And I found it really interesting on the different, each one of those topics brought up this completely different energy with the way I was willing to be present with it. Relationship was one where I was like, oh, I'm not really being present with what I truly desire with this. I'm still looking for what I think I should have. The other one was business. Interestingly, because I was looking at that. And here's what we're going to do. This is just for you. Okay. No one is ever going to see this. You don't show anyone this. This is just for you, so you can get really honest with yourself. And so I was like, that was another one. I was doing it on business, and I was like, and I kept trying to look through how I saw other people creating business, so I could get some sense of what would actually work for me with regards to it, rather than go, okay, if I could have this be anything, what would it be? Same relationship. If you could have it, if you could create relationship as anything, what would that be?
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna go with two oldies but cuties. Very
Sure.
simple. If you didn't have the last name that you had and you were not your nationality, then what kind of relationship would you like to create?
You
Just
mean
like
if
that.
you're not? I like it.
So if you're not Porteni and you're not Mexican, then what kind of relationship is available to you? You know, like years and years ago, I started exploring different like types of relationships, you know, like open relationships or polyamorous or blah blah blah. And I thought, since I've only chosen like being in a relationship with that was completely exclusive, that was the only thing that worked for me. And in that period, I realized like I'm way more versatile than I actually had acknowledged. I'm glad that I had this phase of actually, tasting everything and just actually realizing if it works for me. But I was able to do that because I wasn't functioning as a Molteni and I wasn't functioning as a Mexicana. Like that was totally out of the window. That was like, okay, if I'm just me, then what really works for me? And the other one is, if you are in a relationship, just how much fun can you have? Like really start from that place. Whenever you go, I had such an amazing feedback from Gary. I had a session with him years and years ago, and I was asking him about the relationship that I had, and he was like, "You're always trying to like resolve the difficulties or want to come to terms based on finding the perfect argument. That's not going to work. Use humor. When you're in a conflict, use humor, not mockery, which is completely different. Just use humor to get out of it. And it works like a charm. So have fun. And how less significant can you make all the differences that you are having or all the struggles that you're facing? That'll make things so much easier.
I love that. Add humor to it. And also, I got to say, the create one with yourself. That one for me has been. I had somebody text me in one of the, I got this Telegram chat with a bunch of people in it, and I just like contribute what I can in there. And I was asking yesterday, hey, what can I contribute to you guys today? And this guy jumped in there and left saying, oh, how do I deal with relationships, breaking up from relationships, and the need to create a relationship, in my life, basically. And that just, there was a universe of other things that went with it. And I left this message in there that I was like, one of the things that I realized for me was my need to create a relationship wasn't based on the relationship. It was actually based on my need to avoid looking what was true for me.
Yeah.
And that part was huge for me, because I noticed now, I said when that conversation with Gary, where, that energy had been coming up for me, the one of my go-to questions with that is, okay, what am I avoiding?
Yeah.
Not what am I needing or what am I thinking I desire here? What am I avoiding with this? And it's always more of me.
Yeah. How does it get any better than that, Mr. Brennan? What did you know?
Puppy dogs are going. Your puppy dogs are going off in the background there.
Yeah. Do you know that we were teasing you before we came live and that we were going to change your last name? You were gonna be Brendon K. Brendon K.
Brendan,
Because what sounds
yeah.
like K in Spanish, so you're gonna be Brendon K.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. I actually, as soon as we're on the topic of relationship, and this might be helpful for some of you, in this same conversation that I was having with Gary, I can't quite remember the other there was different energies that I was looking at with him, but one of the questions he asked me, which just tweaked me, he goes, okay, so if you were gay, if you were creating a relationship with a man,
Yeah.
what kind of relationship would it be? And as soon as he asked, I went, oh, I could actually have a relationship with myself.
Wow. Wow.
And that was such a different energy for me, because I always had this weird stuff come up with men, because I never had any close relationships with men. You know, I always saw when I was growing up, to be a man was to be abusive, was to be violent, was to be, you know, dominant, was to be conquering, was to be all those things. And to me, I was like, well, I don't want to be a man if that's what being a man is. But I didn't realize until it started unfolding after the conversation that with that point of view, I wasn't allowing myself to have a relationship with all of the parts of me that is man.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a man.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, interesting.
And I think that, I mean, part of the things that makes having a human body like so fun is that you can choose something different every time. Like, I remember very clearly when I was younger, I was like, I'm pretty sure I chose to be a woman in this lifetime because of all the accessories, all the different clothing that you can have, like all the different like images that you can portray. But it was like,
For the drama. Was for the drama.
Totally. But it was also from that space of, I can be so different from time to time, and I can adapt so easily that why not? You know, like, why not? Why wouldn't I choose to be different every single day? Like, if I didn't have to be anything, then I can choose anything in any point in time. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I mean, most of the things that you just mentioned that you described were things that are maybe not so creative, conducive, but sometimes you have to be that energy when it's required. Like, you don't know when you need to be like abusive or have that energy of abuse to change the situation up. So yeah, again, if you don't resist it, then you can use it when it actually works for you. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on here with me.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Brandon.
For those of you who listened, I hope it contributed and, you know, you get something from these chats. Thank you, darling. Thank you, Alba. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Guys. Bye.